All right. Welcome back to Mr. Parker's World History class. Today we are going to be talking about World War I, the Schlieffen Plan, and the Western Front during World War I. So you should have open your presentation, and you should have open your notes page that you see here in your screen right now to take notes on your presentation that I have. So last week we went over the alliances, the main causes, everything prior to the war. Today we're going to talk about what happens during the war. Okay. So the first part of your notes, you have a quick write coming up next after our essential question here, which is how did the Schlieffen Plan and the new weapons of war lead to trench warfare on the Western Front? And you will answer that on the bottom of your notes page after you take the notes and get through all those. Okay, you can write that in your summary, the answer to that question. Okay, so this is a map of the Schlieffen Plan. Okay, and you'll answer your quick write off of this map question right here. Looking at the map, okay, which two countries does Germany march through to try to get to Paris? Okay, so looking at the map, here's Germany, France, right here, Paris, right there. What two countries does Germany go through? All right. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the presentation. We're going to go on. So why did Germany need the Schlieffen Plan? Okay. What did they need the Schlieffen Plan for? If you remember from our lectures on main causes, the alliances, if you look at the Triple Entente prior to World War I starting, the Triple Entente consisted of Great Britain, France, and Russia. Now, between France and Russia, you have Germany. So Germany was caught between two enemies, and they would have to fight a two-front war if the two alliances ever went to war. So Germany needed to come up with a war plan to avoid a war on two fronts, because you don't want to split your army and have to fight on your western front and on your eastern front. So they decided to come up with the Schlieffen Plan, and it called for Germany to defeat France rapidly and then turn to the eastern front for a major offensive against Russia. They thought it would take Russia time to mobilize so they could defeat France quickly. So after all of the dominoes kind of fell after the assassination of the Archduke in Serbia and Russia backing Serbia, on August 2nd, the Germans decided they needed to activate the Schlieffen Plan because the Russians were going to start to mobilize their army against Austria-Hungary. So on August 2nd, 1914, the German army invaded Luxembourg and Belgium according to the Schlieffen Plan. Now, their plan called for a quick run through Belgium. They didn't think the Belgian army would fight very hard or put up much defense, and that way they would be able to get into France quickly. Around the French army, which were going to be all based on the French and German border. But one of the first obstacles that came up against the Schlieffen Plan were that the Germans were held up by the Belgian army. They fought bravely. They didn't abandon their forts. They made the Germans go through Belgium, and it took them much longer than they had expected. The Belgians were also backed up by a British Expeditionary Army Force, which arrived extremely quickly from Great Britain, which Germany did not plan on. And then we have Russia. Russia mobilized its army in just 10 days. So they got ready for war. They took their soldiers to the front in only 10 days. In the Schlieffen Plan, Germany had thought this would take weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, for the Germans to mobilize their army and maybe a month or so to be ready to actually fight. But the Russians mobilized quickly, and this threw off the Schlieffen Plan also. So the German army was mobilized, the Russian army was mobilized, and the Germans had to withdraw troops from the Schlieffen Plan in attacking France and send troops to the eastern border to protect Germany from the Russians. So the Schlieffen Plan failed. The French army stopped the Germans at the Battle of the Marne just outside of Paris. And the Germans almost succeeded in capturing Paris. They were just a few miles outside of Paris, but the French put up a hard-fought battle in the Battle of the Marne and were able to stop the Germans from coming into Paris. So instead of knocking France out of the war, the Germans found themselves trapped on the Western Front. And instead of a short, swift war that everybody had anticipated, World War I became a long, costly, and horrible war. Okay, you now have video number 1 on the Schlieffen Plan. So on your notes, click on the video link and write down 5 notes from the video. You can do that now. And we're going to head on to life in the trenches. So after the failure of the Schlieffen Plan, trenches were built from the North Sea, from the English Channel on the French-Belgium border, all the way down through Switzerland. Hundreds of miles of trenches on the Western Front. Here you see, this is the kind of line where the front lines were throughout World War I. They really didn't move a whole lot from these areas right here for 4 years. You had the French protecting France, the British, and some of the Belgians that were still around fighting on the Western Front against the Germans. So that goes in a continuous front. Now your next one is why trenches? Well, neither side could defeat the other. They're at what they call a stalemate, and neither side was winning the war. The new weaponry that they had in World War I, particularly the machine gun, changed the way war was being fought. And to escape the machine gun fire, the soldiers on both sides started digging trenches to get out of the line of gunfire. So that was why they decided to build the trenches. You next have a video clip called Hell in the Trenches. So watch that video clip and then we will get back. Okay, trenches. Trenches, both sides dug trenches. They're usually about 7 feet deep. You wanted the trenches to be deep enough so that soldiers could walk through the trenches without being exposed to gunfire from the other side. And about 6 feet wide. You needed enough room so soldiers could walk by each other and not be bumping into each other. And they had underground dugouts where soldiers would sleep. They would get out of the way of the soldiers walking through the trenches, so they would dig into the sides of the walls. And this is where the soldiers lived during World War I. They ate, slept, did everything in the trenches. Here is a picture of the trenches. You see this would be the soldiers on this side attacking. You'd have barbed wire in front of your trench, and these are the system of trenches with machine guns and soldiers in here, concrete bunkers with machine guns in them. You can see the dugouts here. Okay, this is going to end the first video on World War I on the Western Front.